Chernobyl is often described as the worst nuclear disaster in history, but that description alone does not explain why it became so devastating. Many disasters are caused by technical failures, bad luck, or unforeseen circumstances. Chernobyl was different. It was not just the result of a reactor exploding, it was the result of decisions made long before that night and of lies told long after it. What happened at Chernobyl was not only a technological catastrophe, but a political and human one, shaped by secrecy, fear, and the refusal to admit mistakes. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union placed enormous importance on appearances. Strength had to be projected at all times, both to its own citizens and to the rest of the world. Major infrastructure projects were meant to prove that the system worked. Nuclear power in particular was seen as a symbol of modernity and superiority. A nuclear plant was not just a power source, it was a statement. Within this culture, admitting design flaws or safety risks was dangerous, not only professionally but politically. Engineers and scientists were expected to make things work, not to question whether they should. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant used a reactor design known as the RBMK. On paper, it was efficient and powerful. In reality, it had several critical weaknesses. The reactor was unstable at low power levels, which made certain operations extremely risky. It relied heavily on manual control, increasing the chance of human error. Most importantly, it lacked a reinforced containment structure that could prevent radioactive material from escaping in the event of a major accident. These flaws were not unknown. Internal documents and reports had raised concerns years before the disaster, but addressing them would have required redesigns, shutdowns, and admissions that something was wrong. That was not acceptable in the system at the time. Near the power plant stood the city of Pripyat, built specifically to house the workers and families who supported the facility. It was a young, modern city with wide streets, new apartment blocks, schools, cultural centers, and recreational facilities. Life there was considered good by Soviet standards. Many residents were proud of their work and believed they were contributing to the future of the country. The plant was seen as safe, advanced, and carefully monitored. Trust in the authorities was high, and few questioned whether living so close to a nuclear reactor could be dangerous. On April 25, 1986, preparations began for a safety test on reactor number 4. The test was designed to see whether the reactor could continue to be cooled during a power outage. Previous attempts had already shown that this test was risky, especially at low power levels. Engineers knew the reactor behaved unpredictably under these conditions, yet the test was approved once again. As the procedure began, power levels dropped far below what was considered safe. Under normal circumstances, the test should have been stopped immediately. Instead, operators attempted to recover the situation by adjusting controls manually. To do so, several automatic safety systems were disabled. Alarms were overridden, and safeguards designed to prevent catastrophic failure were intentionally switched off. Each decision increased the danger, but the pressure to complete the test remained. At 1:23 a.m., the reactor entered an unstable state. A sudden power surge occurred, far beyond what the system could handle. The emergency shutdown button was pressed, but due to a fatal design flaw, the control rods increased the reaction instead of stopping it. Within seconds, reactor number 4 exploded. The explosion destroyed the reactor core and blew the heavy concrete lid into the air, exposing nuclear fuel directly to the atmosphere. A fire ignited that burned radioactive material openly. Enormous amounts of radiation were released and carried into the sky, spreading far beyond the plant itself. Inside the control room, confusion and disbelief followed. Some operators refused to accept that the reactor had been destroyed because the idea was unthinkable. Radiation readings climbed rapidly, but many instruments were incapable of measuring levels that high and failed completely. Early reports described the situation as under control, even as the reality outside worsened by the minute. Firefighters were among the first responders. They were dispatched quickly, but were never told they were facing a nuclear disaster. Believing they were dealing with a routine industrial fire, they arrived without protective equipment, climbed onto the reactor building, and handled radioactive debris with their bare hands. Many received lethal doses of radiation within minutes and would die painfully in the weeks that followed. While the reactor burned, life in Pripyat continued almost normally. People slept through the night, unaware of what had happened just kilometers away. The next morning, children played outside. Families walked through the city, and windows were left open as radioactive particles settled over homes and streets. Authorities had access to radiation data and knew the danger was real, but evacuating the city would have meant admitting failure. For more than a day, no evacuation order was given. 36 hours later, buses finally arrived. Residents were told to leave temporarily and to bring only essential items. They were assured they would return in a few days. Most believed this and left everything behind. Food remained on tables, toys stayed on the floor, and pets were locked inside apartments. Pripyat was emptied in hours and never repopulated. At this point, it becomes clear that Chernobyl was not just a technical disaster, but a failure of communication and honesty. If you're interested in understanding events like this beyond the official explanations, this is exactly what this channel focuses on. Subscribing helps you stay connected to more stories that were never fully told. As Soviet officials attempted to control the narrative, radiation continued to spread across Europe. The truth did not emerge through transparency, but through foreign detection. In Sweden, radiation sensors at a nuclear facility were triggered when workers arrived for their shifts. Investigations quickly showed the contamination was coming from outside the country. Only then did the Soviet Union publicly acknowledge that an accident had occurred at Chernobyl, and even then the information was limited. A massive cleanup operation followed. Hundreds of thousands of people were mobilized, known as liquidators. They included soldiers, engineers, miners, and civilian volunteers. Their task was to contain the damage, remove radioactive debris, and prevent further releases. Many were sent into highly contaminated areas with minimal protection. Some were allowed to work only seconds at a time before being replaced. The work was exhausting, dangerous, and often poorly documented. The long-term health consequences were severe. Many liquidators developed cancer, heart disease, and chronic illnesses years later. Psychological trauma was common, driven by the knowledge that they had been exposed without fully understanding the risks. Their sacrifices were critical in preventing an even greater catastrophe, yet they received little recognition. In the decades after the explosion, the full impact of Chernobyl became increasingly clear. Thyroid cancer rates rose sharply, particularly among children exposed to radioactive iodine. Large regions were declared uninhabitable, forcing permanent displacement. Entire communities vanished, and the environmental effects continue to be studied today. The true number of deaths caused directly and indirectly by the disaster remains disputed, with estimates ranging from thousands to far higher. Chernobyl was not only a failure of technology, it was a failure of a system that valued control over truth and image over human life. The explosion destroyed a reactor, but the lies and delays multiplied the damage. What Chernobyl ultimately reveals is the danger of secrecy, and what happens when honesty is treated as a threat. If you want to keep exploring stories like this, events that shaped the world in ways most people were never told about, subscribe to Megaphiles TV. More episodes are coming.